Princess Lyra stood on the balcony of the high palace tower, her gaze fixed on the vast plains of Zyphora below. The wind whipped through her hair, and for a moment she closed her eyes and let it carry her thoughts away. She loved this view, not just for its beauty, but because it reminded her of the world beyond her family's control. The sun, setting in shades of orange and violet, reflected off the crystalline spires of the city, creating a pattern that seemed almost alive. Yet, as breathtaking as it was, Lyra felt a hollow ache in her chest. All her life, she had been told she was special. Her intelligence, her courage, and her skill in leadership were praised endlessly in the palace. But despite all her talents, she had been rejected again. The alien suitors had come, each expecting to win her favor, and each had turned away. Some had whispered excuses about her unique condition, a rare genetic difference that marked her body and mind slightly different from the majority of her people. Others had simply found her too bold, too independent. Whatever the reason, they all left, one by one, leaving Lyra alone with her frustration. Her father, the king, had tried to console her, though even he seemed uncertain. "Lyra, sometimes the right person is not the first to come," he said gently during dinner. "Do not despair. Our world is vast, and there are many who might recognize your value." But Lyra could not shake the feeling of isolation. She wandered the palace halls that night, the soft glow of lanterns illuminating her path, thinking of the future. She loved her people dearly, but she hated the rigid rules that governed their lives. They valued perfection over courage, tradition over innovation, and appearances over character. Lyra had always been different. She did not merely obey the rules. She questioned them. She did not simply follow orders. She thought about the consequences of every action, and perhaps that was why she remained unchosen. The following morning, news arrived that a delegation of humans had landed on Zyphora. They were the first of their kind to step onto her world, a people her advisors had only ever read about in reports. Unlike the alien visitors, humans were known for their adaptability and courage. The council described them as unpredictable, emotional, and sometimes reckless, but undeniably intelligent. Lyra's curiosity was immediate. She had spent countless hours reading about humans, studying their history, their society, their achievements. Unlike her own people, who followed strict protocols, humans seemed to thrive on creativity and bold choices. She wondered if they would understand her, if they would see her not as an anomaly, but as a person worthy of respect. The palace arranged a formal reception for the human delegation. Lyra attended, her long gown brushing the floor, the ceremonial sash across her shoulder gleaming under the lights. She observed the humans carefully as they entered, noting the differences immediately. Their movements were less precise than those of her own people, but there was an energy about them, a sense of freedom in the way they carried themselves. And then she saw him. Elias. He was not the tallest of the group, nor the most imposing, but something about him drew her attention. Perhaps it was the way he moved with ease through the crowd, smiling politely at the dignitaries, yet never bowing so low as to seem false. Perhaps it was the spark in his eyes, a mix of curiosity and quiet confidence. Lyra felt a strange flutter of anticipation, something she had not felt for years. The formal introductions began. Each member of the human delegation stepped forward, exchanging words of diplomacy, shaking hands, and exchanging gifts. When it was Elias's turn to approach her, Lyra noted the careful respect in his posture. He did not glance at her unusual features with judgment or curiosity. Instead, he looked directly into her eyes, as if he were seeing her for the first time, truly seeing her. "Princess Lyra," he said, his voice calm and steady. "It is an honor to meet you." Lyra inclined her head, her voice barely above a whisper. "Welcome to Zyphora, Elias." The evening continued with formalities, but Lyra could not stop stealing glances at him. She watched the way he interacted with others, The way he asked questions and listened to answers, the way he smiled when someone told a story or made a joke. Unlike the alien suitors, who often spoke in rehearsed phrases and measured tones, Elias seemed genuine. He seemed alive. Later, as the crowd thinned and the humans retired to their quarters, Lyra wandered into the palace garden. The moon hung low in the sky, casting a silver glow over the meticulously arranged plants and fountains. She walked along the marble paths, her thoughts still on Elias and the humans. She did not expect to see him, yet there he was, standing near a fountain, studying the water with a quiet intensity. "You enjoy the garden?" she asked softly, approaching him. Elias turned, surprised but pleased to see her. "Yes," he said. "It is beautiful. Different from anything I have ever seen." Lyra nodded, her fingers brushing the petals of a nearby flower. "It is one of the few places where I can think freely." They walked together along the garden paths, exchanging words about trivial things at first. The plants, the stars, the architecture. But gradually, the conversation deepened. Lyra found herself talking about her feelings of isolation, about the rejection she had faced from the suitors, and about her frustration with the strict traditions of her people. Elias listened intently, never interrupting, never offering empty platitudes. "It must be difficult," he said finally, "to be admired by everyone, yet feel alone. To be expected to follow rules that do not fit who you are." Lyra was surprised by the understanding in his voice. No alien had ever said such words to her with genuine concern. "Yes," she admitted.
"It is as if I am meant to live according to a pattern that was designed for someone else." Elias smiled gently. "Then perhaps the pattern needs to change."
"Perhaps someone like you is meant to show others that there is another way." Lyra felt a spark of hope ignite within her chest. For the first time in a long time, she felt seen, not for her beauty, not for her titles, but for herself. Over the next few days, Lyra sought out opportunities to interact with the human delegation. She asked questions about their planet, their customs, their ideas about leadership and society. She was fascinated by the way they valued choice, freedom, and courage. They celebrated differences rather than fearing them. She began to wonder if humanity, in its imperfection, held the qualities her people had lost. The more time she spent with Elias, the more she recognized the contrast between humans and her own people. The alien council remained rigid, bound by tradition and protocol. Decisions were made based on hierarchy and appearance, not on practicality or morality. The humans, on the other hand, thought creatively and acted boldly, even when the outcome was uncertain. One evening, during a private stroll along the palace balcony, Elias spoke of his experiences traveling between worlds. "Humans make mistakes," he admitted, "but they also learn quickly. We adapt because we must, and sometimes that leads to discoveries others would never imagine." Lyra smiled faintly. "It sounds like your people embrace challenges rather than fear them." "Yes," Elias said. "Challenges shape us, and sometimes they reveal strengths we did not know we had." Lyra looked out at the city below, the glowing lights reflecting on the river that wound through the capital. She felt a flicker of determination. Perhaps she could be the bridge between her people and the humans, showing them a new way forward. Perhaps she could finally find someone who understood her, not because of her status, but because of who she truly was. But not all in the palace were pleased with her attention toward the humans. Some advisors whispered that she was risking her reputation, that she might disgrace the royal family by associating with beings so unpredictable and unconventional. Lyra heard the whispers but chose to ignore them. For the first time, she felt that her judgment, guided by her heart and mind, was more important than the opinions of others. As the human delegation prepared to depart for a short journey to explore the outer lands, Lyra felt a pang of sadness. She had grown attached to Elias, to the way he saw her, to the spark of possibility he had ignited in her life. But she also knew that their paths might diverge soon. On the morning of their departure, Elias approached her with a small, folded piece of parchment. "I thought you might like this," he said, handing it to her. On it was a simple drawing of the Sciforan skyline. The towers and spires depicted with a kind of warmth and imagination that only a human could capture. A memory of your city, and a reminder that differences are not weaknesses. They are strengths. Lyra held the parchment close, her heart swelling with gratitude. "Thank you, Elias," she said softly. "This means more to me than you know." As the humans left the palace, Lyra stood once again on the balcony, the parchment in her hand and the wind in her hair. She thought of the alien suitors who had rejected her, of the rigid traditions that had constrained her, and of the hope that had begun to bloom within her. Perhaps the world was not as unchangeable as she had believed. Perhaps there was a place for someone like her, someone who dared to be different, who dared to challenge the rules, and who dared to choose her own path. For the first time in years, Lyra smiled freely. The stars above twinkled in silent encouragement, and she felt a sense of anticipation she could not quite explain. Somewhere out there, in a universe full of unknown possibilities, she sensed that her life was about to change in ways she had never imagined. And as the sun dipped below the horizon once more, casting long shadows across the palace grounds, Lyra made a silent promise to herself. She would not wait for someone else to choose her. She would find the courage to shape her own destiny. And perhaps, just perhaps, she would meet a human who could see her as she truly was, and together they might change the world. After the humans left for their exploration of the outer lands, Princess Lyra felt the palace corridors unusually silent. The usual buzz of servants and officials seemed muted, as if the entire city waited for her next move. She carried Elias's drawing with her wherever she went, finding comfort in its warmth and imagination. It reminded her that someone, far away from the rigid palace walls, understood her in a way her own people never could. Despite the comfort it brought, Lyra could not ignore the questions forming in her mind. Was it possible for someone from another world to truly understand her? Could humans, who had never lived under the strict customs of Zyphora, see her as more than a royal ornament, as more than a problem to be solved? She longed to know if Elias could be the person she had been waiting for, even if she did not fully understand what she wanted. The next morning, Lyra woke before sunrise. She often did this when her thoughts were too heavy to let sleep stay. The sky was painted in soft pinks and blues, and the air carried the subtle fragrance of the palace gardens below. Moving silently, she left her chambers and descended to the lower terraces, where the morning mist swirled like delicate ribbons around the fountains. To her surprise, she found Elias there, alone, standing near a fountain, watching the water ripple in the early light. He had returned sooner than expected. "Princess Lyra," he said, a soft smile on his face. "I hoped I might find you here." Lyra smiled faintly. "I did not expect to see you so soon. Had you returned from the outer lands already?" Elias shook his head. "We are preparing for our journey. But I wanted to speak with you before we left. There is much I want to learn about your world, and perhaps you might share it with me." Lyra hesitated, then nodded. She led him along the palace walkways, past flowering trees and sparkling fountains, away from the eyes of servants or palace guards. The sun's first rays caught the edges of the crystal spires in the distance, casting long reflections that danced like tiny stars. They spoke first of simple things, the city, its history, the way the rivers curved through the plains, and the festivals that marked important seasons. Lyra explained the tradition of the royal court, the ceremonies that had always felt like chains on her freedom. She watched Elias carefully, noting the attentive way he listened, the way he asked questions not out of curiosity alone, but from a desire to understand. "Your people seem careful," he said gently. "Every move seems planned, every word measured. It must feel like a heavy weight, carrying so many expectations." Lyra sighed. It is more than a weight. It is a cage. I am praised for my abilities, yet I am constrained by rules that have nothing to do with who I am. I cannot speak freely. I cannot act freely, without causing offense or fear. Elias nodded slowly, as if he truly understood. On Earth, humans make rules too, but we often break them when they do not serve us. We learn by trying, by failing, and by finding better ways. Perhaps your world could benefit from such courage. Lyra laughed softly, a sound that echoed lightly in the morning air. Courage is often punished here. Those who challenge tradition are seen as reckless, even dangerous. I have tried speaking up before, and the result was uncomfortable. But you continue, Elias said, his tone steady. That is what makes you different. That is what makes you remarkable. His words, simple and sincere, struck a chord within her. No alien suitor had ever praised her for her independence. They had only seen her difference as a flaw. Here was someone who did not flinch from her uniqueness, someone who recognized her strength. For the first time in years, Lyra felt a sense of hope that was not tied to duty or expectation, but to choice. Over the next several days, the humans explored the outer lands, and Lyra found herself drawn to their presence at every opportunity. She visited the training grounds, where human explorers tested their equipment and learned about Zyphora's environment. She joined them for discussions about strategy and observation, sharing her knowledge of the terrain and its hidden dangers. Elias always sought her out, asking for her opinions and listening carefully to her advice. He admired her knowledge and intelligence, but more than that, he seemed to respect her judgment. Lyra felt a sense of partnership with him, a feeling she had never experienced with her own people. One afternoon, as the sun reached its highest point in the sky, Lyra and Elias sat on a hill overlooking a wide plain. The wind was warm and gentle, carrying the scent of wildflowers. Lyra sketched the outline of the city in the dirt, and Elias watched with fascination. "You have a sharp eye," he said. "You notice details that others might overlook." "I have had to," she replied. "In my world, one small mistake can lead to serious consequences. I have learned to observe, to anticipate, to act before the situation becomes critical. That is admirable," Elias said. "It reminds me of the way humans solve problems. We rely on observation and creativity. And sometimes we rely on each other." Lyra turned to look at him, studying his expression. "Do you
Think humans and Zyphorans could work together? Could we learn from each other?
I believe we could, Elias said confidently.
Your people have discipline and tradition. Humans have adaptability and boldness.
Together, we might accomplish things neither could do alone." Lyra felt a rush of excitement at the idea. She had long believed that her world was confined, trapped by rules and fear of change. Perhaps humans could help her show our people a different path. Perhaps she could finally find a way to make her own voice heard. As the days passed, Lyra's confidence grew. She began suggesting improvements to palace protocols, small changes that allowed for more flexibility and collaboration. While some advisors were skeptical, others were quietly impressed. Lyra felt a quiet satisfaction knowing that she was making a difference, even in small ways. Elias, too, seemed to grow more comfortable in her presence. He shared stories of Earth, of cities where humans had overcome impossible challenges, of leaders who had changed the course of history through courage and determination. Lyra listened eagerly, fascinated by the similarities and differences between their worlds. One evening, as twilight painted the sky in shades of purple and gold, Lyra and Elias walked along a cliff overlooking the ocean that bordered the city. The waves crashed against the rocks below, sending up a fine mist. They spoke of possibilities, of dreams, of futures not yet written. "I have spent my life following rules that were set before I was born," Lyra said, her voice quiet but firm. "I have obeyed because I had no choice, but I am beginning to realize that choice is the most powerful thing a person can have. Elias nodded. And you have the courage to use it. That is rare, Lyra. Many would be too afraid to step outside the expectations set by others. But you are willing to face uncertainty, to trust yourself. Lyra looked at him, her eyes reflecting the fading light of the sun.
Do you think it is possible to change an entire world, to show people that there is a different way to live?
I do, Elias said without hesitation. It will not be easy, but it begins with small steps. Every act of courage, every decision to act with integrity and empathy sets an example for others, and sometimes that example is enough to spark change. Lyra felt a sense of purpose swell within her. For the first time, she understood that her difference was not a burden, but a strength. She could lead, not just by title, but by example. And with humans like Elias by her side, perhaps she could inspire her people to embrace new ideas without fear. As night fell and the first stars appeared in the sky, Lyra and Elias remained on the cliff, watching the constellations. The wind carried a quiet promise of possibility, and the ocean's rhythm seemed to echo the steady beat of her own heart. Do you ever wonder what it would be like, Lyra asked softly, to live without rules, without expectations, without the weight of tradition? All the time, Elias said, smiling. But then I meet people like you, and I realize that the challenge is not to escape rules, but to change them. To create a world where people can live freely and courageously without fear of judgment or failure. Lyra felt a warmth spread through her chest, a feeling of hope she had not known she was capable of. For the first time in her life, she believed that she could be seen, truly seen, for who she was and not for what others expected of her. The days that followed were filled with exploration and learning. Lyra accompanied the humans to distant valleys and high mountains, observing their methods and teaching them the ways of Xiphora. She noticed how Elias adapted quickly, learning from mistakes and finding creative solutions. She admired his courage and flexibility, traits that reminded her of the qualities her people had once valued but had long forgotten. Lyra began to think differently about her world. The alien council, which had once seemed unchangeable, now appeared capable of growth, if only the right example could be shown. And perhaps, she thought, that example could begin with her, and a human who saw her as she truly was. By the time the human delegation prepared to return to the city, Lyra felt a mixture of sadness and anticipation. She had learned so much from them, and from Elias, yet she knew that their journey together was only beginning. She had glimpsed a world beyond the palace walls, a world where courage and choice mattered more than tradition and expectation, and she was determined to bring that world closer to her own. As they reached the city gates, Elias turned to her with a small, genuine smile. "Princess Lyra," he said, "this is not goodbye. There is much more for us to explore, and much more to learn together. Are you ready?" Lyra looked at him, her heart steady and her mind clear. "Yes," she said. "I am ready." And for the first time in years, she felt a sense of possibility that stretched beyond the stars themselves. A human had shown her that courage and choice could open doors that tradition had locked. And in that moment, Lyra knew that her life, and perhaps her world, would never be the same. The sun rose over the city of Xiphora like a fiery sentinel, casting long shadows over the crystalline towers and glimmering streets. Princess Lyra stood on the balcony of her palace, her eyes scanning the distant horizon. Today was different. There was a tension in the air, subtle but unmistakable. The humans had returned from their exploration of the outer lands with urgent news. Elias approached her quietly, his expression serious but calm. "Lyra, we have detected something unusual," he said. He pointed toward the far edge of the planet's atmosphere. "A rogue asteroid is approaching Xiphora. Its trajectory is unpredictable. If it is not redirected or destroyed, it could cause massive damage to the city and the surrounding lands." Lyra's heart tightened. The council had often discussed natural dangers in theoretical terms. But this was real. She felt the weight of responsibility settle over her shoulders. The alien advisors would debate endlessly, she knew, because protocol demanded hesitation and calculation. But time was short. "What do you suggest?" she asked, her voice steady despite the unease twisting in her stomach. Elias looked at her, his eyes meeting hers with quiet determination. "We need to act quickly. My team and I have a plan that could divert the asteroid using our propulsion technology. But we will need access to your city's energy grid and some of your people's resources." Lyra considered this. She could feel the fear rising in the council's advisors, the ones who clung tightly to tradition. But she had learned from Elias that courage was often the first step toward change. She took a deep breath and nodded. "Then we begin immediately. We cannot wait for indecision to waste precious time." Together, Lyra and Elias convened a small team of trusted advisors and human engineers. Maps were spread across polished tables, diagrams of the asteroid's path illuminated by holographic projections. Calculations were made, strategies discussed, and contingencies planned. Lyra contributed what she knew of the planet's magnetic fields, the gravitational currents, and the terrain around the city. Elias incorporated human ingenuity, suggesting ways to use the planet's natural resources in combination with their technology. As the plan took shape, the tension in the room was palpable. Many of the older advisors whispered their doubts, muttering about risks, traditions, and protocol. But Lyra stood firm. "We cannot waste time with hesitation," she said. "If we act together, humans and Zyphorans, we can save our city." The humans worked tirelessly alongside the Zyphorans, setting up propulsion devices and calculating angles for the asteroid's trajectory. Lyra moved among them, offering guidance and encouragement, her confidence growing with each passing hour. For the first time, she felt the thrill of real collaboration, of leadership that mattered not for ceremony, but for survival. As the asteroid drew closer, the council grew restless. Some demanded that the humans leave, fearing failure or dishonor. Others questioned Lyra's judgment, uncomfortable with her boldness. But she remained steadfast. She had seen the humans' courage firsthand, their adaptability, and their ability to think under pressure. She trusted Elias, and she trusted herself. The moment of action arrived. The propulsion devices were activated, their hum vibrating through the ground beneath them. Lyra and Elias watched from the observation deck, calculating and recalculating, adjusting angles and energy levels. The asteroid, a massive rock glowing faintly from friction against the atmosphere, hurtled towards Zyphora at terrifying speed. "Steady," Elias said, his voice calm. "We can do this." Lyra felt her heart pound, but she nodded. "We will do this, together." The propulsion devices fired in precise sequences, creating a force designed to alter the asteroid's path. Death. For tense minutes, nothing seemed to happen. Then, slowly, the asteroid began to shift, its trajectory bending away from the city. Cheers erupted from the humans, but Lyra remained focused, watching every detail to ensure success. Finally, with a slight wobble and a glowing streak across the sky, the asteroid passed safely by Zyphora, its destructive potential averted. The city below was safe, thanks to their combined efforts. Lyra exhaled a long breath, her shoulders relaxing for the first time in days. Elias turned to her, a wide smile breaking across his face. "We did it," he said.
Zyphora is safe, Lyra smiled, feeling a surge of pride and exhilaration.
"Yes, we did it. Together." The council, witnessing the success, was forced to reconsider their doubts. They had seen, in real time, that courage, collaboration, and quick thinking could achieve what protocol alone could not. Murmurs of admiration replaced whispers of criticism, and some advisors even approached Lyra with cautious respect. In the aftermath of the crisis, Lyra and Elias worked to assess the planet's damage and ensure the safety of its citizens. Relief swept through the city as news spread that the asteroid had passed without harm. The people cheered, not only for their safety but for the visible proof that leadership and cooperation could make a difference. During the celebration, Lyra found herself speaking to groups of Zyphorans and humans together, explaining the importance of teamwork and trust. She spoke of courage, of seeing opportunity where others see danger, and of the power of choosing one's path. Her words were met with nods and murmurs of agreement, and she felt a renewed sense of purpose. Elias stayed close, quietly supporting her, offering advice when needed and celebrating victories with subtle humor. Their partnership had grown beyond admiration. They had become a team, relying on each other's strengths and trusting each other's judgment. Lyra felt a sense of equality with him that she had never experienced with anyone else. That evening, as the city settled under a blanket of stars, Lyra and Elias walked along the palace terrace. The air was cool, carrying the scent of evening flowers and the distant hum of the city below. "You were incredible today," Elias said quietly. "Your leadership made all the difference. Without your guidance, the humans could not have acted as efficiently."
You were the bridge between our worlds.
Lyra felt a warmth spread through her chest at his words. "We both contributed," she said softly. "I could not have done this without you. And you inspire courage, Elias. Not just in me, but in everyone who works alongside you." They walked in silence for a moment, watching the stars reflect in the palace fountains. Lyra felt the enormity of what had happened. Not only had they saved the city, but she had proven to herself that her differences were strengths, that her voice mattered, and that she could lead boldly, even in the face of fear and tradition. In the days that followed, the council began to incorporate some of the lessons learned from the crisis. They allowed more flexibility in decision-making, encouraged collaboration between humans and Xiphorans, and began to reconsider old customs that stifled innovation. Lyra saw firsthand that change was possible, that courage and example could slowly shift even the most rigid minds. Meanwhile, Lyra and Elias spent their time together exploring the boundaries of Xiphora, learning from each other and from the world around them. They discovered hidden valleys, ancient ruins, and rivers that shimmered with minerals unique to the planet. Through it all, their trust grew stronger, built on shared experiences and mutual respect. One afternoon, as they rested on the edge of a cliff overlooking a vast canyon, Lyra spoke of her hopes for the future. "I want Xiphora to be a place where people can make choices, where courage is valued, and where differences are celebrated rather than feared." Elias nodded.
And you can make that happen. You already have.
"People have seen your courage, your intelligence, and your willingness to act. You are an example, Lyra, and examples are powerful." Lyra smiled, feeling a sense of clarity she had never known. Perhaps this is just the beginning. Perhaps, with humans and Xiphorans working together, we can achieve more than either could alone. Elias looked at her, his expression earnest.
I believe we can, and I will be here, every step of the way.
The partnership between Lyra and Elias had become a symbol of what could be accomplished when differences were embraced rather than feared. Their success against the asteroid had shown the city and the council that courage, adaptability, and collaboration could overcome challenges that seemed insurmountable. Yet Lyra knew that the journey was far from over. The city still held traditions and fears that would not vanish overnight. Change would require patience, determination, and continued leadership. But she felt ready. With Elias by her side, and with the lessons learned from their shared experiences, she knew they could face whatever challenges lay ahead. As night fell and the city lights shimmered like stars on the ground, Lyra stood on the palace balcony once more. She looked at the sky, imagining the paths of countless asteroids, planets, and stars, and she felt a sense of possibility stretching beyond the horizon. She had faced rejection, loneliness, and doubt, but she had also found courage, partnership, and hope. And in that quiet moment, Lyra understood something important. The true measure of strength was not perfection, nor adherence to tradition, nor fear of failure. It was the willingness to act, to trust, and to embrace differences. It was the courage to make choices, even when the outcome was uncertain. Elias joined her, standing quietly at her side. They watched the stars together, feeling the weight of the day lift and the promise of tomorrow settle softly around them. For Lyra, The events of the past days had proven that change was possible, that courage was contagious, and that the right partnership could inspire not just hope, but transformation. Together they turned from the balcony, ready to face the future, knowing that whatever came next, they would face it side by side. The city of Zyphora was quiet in the early morning, bathed in the soft glow of the rising sun. The events of the past weeks had left a lasting mark on the palace, the council, and the citizens. Where once there had been fear of change, there was now curiosity. Where once there had been hesitation and doubt, there was now cautious admiration for the courage and partnership that had saved the city. Princess Lyra walked along the marble corridors, her steps steady and her mind clear. Today, she would make a choice that could shape not just her life, but the future of her people. She had spent many nights reflecting on the events that had led her to this moment. The alien suitors who had rejected her, the traditions that had constrained her, and the humans who had shown her another way of thinking. All of it had built toward this decision. Lyra understood now that her path was not dictated by lineage, protocol, or expectation. Her path was hers to choose. Elias entered the corridor quietly, carrying a small bag of notes and sketches from the humans' exploration of the outer lands. He had returned from a final report to the council, and he looked at Lyra with a mixture of respect and warmth. "Good morning, Princess," he said softly. "Are you ready?" Lyra smiled. "I am. Today I will not simply follow tradition. Today I will choose." They walked together to the council chamber, where the remaining advisors had gathered. The room was filled with tension at first, as many had not anticipated Lyra's decisive presence. The council members whispered to each other, unsure of how to respond, but Lyra did not falter. She stood before them, her posture strong, her voice calm and clear. "I have considered the past, the rules, and the expectations placed upon me," she began. "I have listened to advice and observed the world around me. I have seen courage and creativity in the humans who have visited our planet, and I have learned that leadership is not about obedience alone. It is about making choices that benefit the people, even if those choices challenge tradition." The council remained silent, some skeptical, some curious, and some slowly realizing the weight of her words. Lyra continued, her voice unwavering. "I am not defined by the rejections I have faced. I am not bound solely by tradition. I am free to choose, and I choose to follow the path that aligns with my heart, my mind, and my principles." A hush fell over the room. Whispers of astonishment rippled through the council. Many had never seen such courage and clarity from a princess before. Lyra had always been admired for her intelligence, but today she commanded respect through her decisiveness and vision. She turned her gaze to Elias, who had quietly remained at her side. "And I have made a choice about my personal life as well," she said. "The alien suitors may have left, but I have found someone who understands me, who respects me, and who inspires me. Someone whose courage matches my own." "Elias, will you be my husband?" Elias looked at her, his eyes shining with sincerity. For a moment he said nothing, as if absorbing the enormity of the question and the trust she was placing in him. Then he smiled warmly, stepping closer. "Lyra, I cannot imagine a greater honor. Yes, I will be your husband." A ripple of surprise and murmur spread through the council chamber. Some advisors frowned at the break from tradition, but many others could not help but smile at the evident bond between Lyra and Elias. The humans in the room cheered softly, proud of the choice she had made and the courage she had displayed. Lyra felt a sense of relief and joy wash over her. This moment was more than a personal victory. It was a signal to her people that courage, choice, and partnership could redefine the future of Zyphora. She had proven that traditions, while important, were not unchangeable, and that leadership required not only wisdom, but bravery. After the announcement, Lyra and Elias walked through the palace gardens, now filled with the soft fragrance of blooming flowers. The city below stirred with anticipation as word of her decision spread. Citizens who had once feared change now watched with hope and curiosity. Lyra saw the excitement in their eyes, and she knew that this choice would ripple far beyond her personal happiness. Elias looked at her as they walked, his expression thoughtful. "Do you realize what this means?" he asked softly.
It is not just about us. Your people will see that courage and choice are powerful.
They will see that someone can lead with integrity and still follow their heart. Lyra nodded.
I understand, and I am ready for it.
Change does not happen overnight, but it begins with a single decision. Today, we begin. The days that followed were filled with preparation for the formal union, but more importantly, they were filled with collaboration. Lyra and Elias worked with the Council to implement lessons learned from the asteroid crisis. Humans and Xiforans shared ideas for new technology, methods for disaster prevention, and ways to encourage creativity and problem-solving in all citizens. Lyra felt invigorated, seeing her vision slowly taking shape. One afternoon, while reviewing reports of the Outer Lands, Elias turned to her with a thoughtful expression. "Lyra, do you ever worry about the challenges ahead?"
About resistance from those who fear change? Lyra considered this. Of course,
she said honestly. "Change is never easy, but courage is not the absence of fear. It is the willingness to act despite it. I cannot control the fears of others, but I can act with integrity and lead by example. That is all I can do." Elias smiled. "And you do it brilliantly. I am proud to be by your side." Their partnership had grown stronger with every challenge they faced together. Elias admired Lyra's intellect, her courage, and her vision for a better future. Lyra admired Elias's adaptability, his calm under pressure, and his ability to see potential where others saw obstacles. Together, they complemented each other perfectly, a blend of strength and understanding that inspired those around them. As the day of the formal union approached, the city prepared for celebrations. Streets were decorated with colorful banners, and citizens gathered to witness the unprecedented event. Lyra walked through the city, observing the excitement and curiosity in the faces of her people. She felt a deep sense of responsibility, knowing that her choice would influence not only her life but the future of Xiphora. On the morning of the ceremony, Lyra stood in her chambers, reflecting on her journey. She had faced rejection, doubt, and the rigidity of tradition. She had discovered courage, trust, and the possibility of partnership across worlds. Her heart was steady, her mind clear, and her purpose resolute. Elias arrived, carrying a simple gift, a small crystal carved into the shape of a star, symbolizing the light of hope and the endless possibilities ahead. "For you," he said softly. "A reminder that even in the darkest times, we can create light together." Lyra accepted the gift with a smile. "Thank you, Elias. It is beautiful. And so is the future we will build together." The ceremony was held in the grand hall of the palace, with humans and Xiforans gathered side by side. There were no rituals of constraint or strict adherence to tradition. Instead, the event celebrated courage, choice, and partnership. Lyra and Elias stood together before the council and the citizens, their hands joined, their hearts united. As they exchanged vows, Lyra felt a sense of peace and certainty. This was her choice, her path, and her voice. She was no longer defined by the expectations of others, nor limited by the rigidity of tradition. She had acted with courage, embraced partnership, and inspired change. Elias spoke his vows with sincerity and warmth, promising to stand beside her, to support her vision, and to honor her strength and independence. Lyra spoke her vows with confidence and grace, promising to lead with integrity, to embrace courage, and to continue shaping a future where choice, creativity, and collaboration were valued above fear and constraint. When the ceremony concluded, the citizens erupted in applause and cheers. Humans and Xiforans alike celebrated not just the union of two individuals, but the union of ideals, of courage, partnership, and the willingness to embrace change. Lyra felt a deep sense of fulfillment, knowing that her choice had created a ripple of hope and possibility throughout her world. In the days that followed, Lyra and Elias continued their work, exploring new technologies, fostering collaboration between their worlds, and encouraging citizens to embrace creativity and courage. They traveled together, learning from one another and sharing knowledge across species. Their partnership became a symbol of what could be achieved when differences were celebrated rather than feared. Lyra often reflected on how far she had come, from the unchosen princess standing alone on her balcony, to a leader shaping the future of her people. She had faced fear, rejection, and uncertainty, yet she had discovered strength, trust, and the power of choice. And through it all, Elias had been by her side, a partner, an ally, and a source of inspiration. One evening, as they stood on a cliff overlooking the city, the wind carrying the scent of evening flowers, Lyra spoke softly. "Do you realize what we have done? Not just for ourselves, but for everyone? We have shown that courage and choice can change the world."
Elias nodded. Yes, and we will continue to do so, together.
There is still much to learn, much to accomplish. But with you, Lyra, I know anything is possible. She smiled, feeling the truth of his words.
And with you, Elias, I feel ready for anything. Together, we can shape a future where differences are celebrated, courage is valued, and choice is respected.
As the stars began to shine above, Lyra and Elias stood side by side, looking toward the endless sky. They had faced challenges, defied expectations, and embraced change. They had discovered the power of courage, partnership, and vision. And in that moment, they knew that their journey had only just begun, that they were ready to face whatever lay ahead, united in purpose and spirit. The city of Zyphora slept peacefully below, a world transformed by the courage of one princess and the ingenuity of a human. The story of Lyra and Elias became a legend, a symbol of hope and possibility for generations to come. And as the night deepened and the stars shimmered in the sky, Lyra and Elias looked forward with determination, knowing that together they could illuminate the universe with courage, choice, and the endless potential of a world unafraid to change.